Hey friends, welcome to part 2 of this week's story tip. If you haven't seen part 1, I would suggest watching part 1. We're talking about music and music editing. And part 2 today, I'm going to go into my editing and I'm actually going to show you the most recent project I worked on and how I edited the music to the story so that it enhances and complements the story. Hi friends, welcome. This is my first time doing a screen capture with this new software I got, so bear with me if I make mistakes. But we're gonna go and dive into music editing, and this is my most recent project. It's a small scope project, but I was really happy with my music editing for this. So I wanted to kind of show you how I do that, and if you didn't catch the tip from part 1, it's to edit your music to complement and enhance your story. So if your story structure kind of flow has kind of a wave pattern and it's building and then it builds to a climax and then it falls and finishes, you want your music to complement that, and in the same way that excuse me, in the same way that your story builds and falls and has different emotional sections and different rhythms, you want your music to complement that. And that's where music editing comes in. So that's what we're going to dive into today. You can see my timeline here. This is just about the final. Actually, it's the final. It says it right there. And it has my adjustment layers and my grade and everything, but we're not going to focus on the visuals. We're going to focus on the music. So these first 2 tracks are actually the interview audio, so we don't need to worry about that as much. We're looking at this section right here, and you'll see that this timeline up here is beautiful, rainbow colored. This is actually the soundtrack that I chose. So also a really good tip is find a soundtrack on Alibi Music Library.com. I discovered them fairly recently, within the last 6 months, and what's really neat about it is that you can download a soundtrack. They have great music, especially like trailer music or things that build, and they have really, really great stuff. But with the track comes all the music stems that come with it. So it has, I'll show you. This top track is the full mix. The second one is a sparse mix, so I guess it's maybe missing a few instruments or something, and you can kind of tell the differences in the waveforms. And then this third one is just piano. It's just the piano for the full song. The next one is strings, and the next one is the underscore mix. So I love it because you get all these stems. Now you have so much more control and so many more options. So let me just I'm gonna show you, just have you listen a little bit to the differences. So we'll start with the full track, and hold on a second. Okay, so now I'm gonna just solo a different one. Sounds kind of similar. Okay, just keys. Just strings. not sure what else it includes besides strings. I'm not like a music professional, but I know that it's different because I can see it in the waveforms. It does have some more build in it. So you can kind of see all the differences. So what I do, my first thing is I basically place all the tracks underneath each other so that they match completely. And that's pretty simple because they come perfectly timed. So I have my full mix again, and then my various stems. And then I align them, and then I cut. You can see all my cuts here, and you can clearly see that they're different sections, different parts of the song that have different sounds, different build-ups, and stuff like that. So you can clearly see the differences. And so I go through and just, I cut, select, I'll cut them all in these different sections that later I can play with and basically construct and custom my own score. Let's get into the editing part. And I'm not going to show you the full thing just for time's sake. I just want to kind of get into it, and I'll explain different parts of the film as we go. And so the first thing I do is I actually go through my timeline and start putting marks. These have moved around a little bit since I marked them, but each mark represents a spot, a moment in my story where I feel like I need something to change in the music. It can be the start of music, it can be the stop of music, it can be we need some tension, or need a big hit to emphasize a moment or emphasize something that she says, or at this point it needs to start building and building, and at this point the song needs to change to a driving rhythm, or it just needs to breathe a while and like let it go. So that's what I do. I go through and I start marking, okay, at this point that's what I want at this point. And as I said, these moved around a little bit since after I made these marks, I was editing and cutting things. So they have moved around a bit, but essentially that's what I did first. I want to know where I want music to have big cues, some sort of music cue. And then I start placing. So you can see this first track, A3, that's sound effects. Just a few sound effects I have. And the rest here are music. These two actually, I can just delete. Those are things I tried and didn't work. But you can see these are taken from these pieces up here. So this one, this is just the piano. I took that, I think, from this, not quite the beginning, but just after that beginning section. And then I brought in this other one that has it's like a, I guess, a darker type of sound that has that cue of like something bad is happening or going to happen. And then I have strings. So I'm going to play this section for you guys just so you can see and hear, and then I'll explain my music choices.
I remember putting myself on the gurney and then getting loaded in the back of the ambulance, and I don't remember anything else. To me, I'm easygoing. I have a great personality. I love everyone. I clean houses for a living. I also nanny. I take care of 4 beautiful children that call me Miss April. Those kids hold a special place in my heart. It was on a Thursday night, around 9:30. I said, I'm gonna go to bed. I climb into bed and I feel what feels like a muscle cramp in the back of my head. As I open my eyes, I realize that I'm on Mike's side of the bed and he's holding my head so I wouldn't fall off the bed, and I seen that he had his phone. An ambulance comes. I remember putting myself on the gurney and I don't remember anything else. They took me to Freeman Hospital. The doctor comes in, he said, you have an aneurysm
Okay.
and it's ruptured.
So let's kind of just take this first section and I'll explain. Sorry, I'm so froggy. So let's just take the first section and I'll explain what my music choices and why I edited it the way that I did. I start with some sound effects to try to get the. Anyway, I start with some sound effects, and then I bring in the music.
Myself on the gurney and then getting loaded in the back of the ambulance.
And this first section is for a hook, trying to get the audience captivated. So I just kind of have kind of a low-key track to begin with, kind of explaining who she is, and then I bring in the strings here because this part of the song starts fading out, and then I bring in the strings.
4 beautiful.
Okay, let me solo both of those tracks. So I actually didn't have the strings in there first, but without it, it was sounding a little bit hollow, and I needed something to carry it through until I brought in this track here. This is without it. See how it's kind of just dry? So this actually helps bridge this transition, and it also starts bringing in a little bit of tension with the strings. Okay, and at this point, this is where she says it was a Thursday night, and then doom, and that piano brings that section of the part where it feels like something is about to happen. And the reason I put it at this exact point was because if I brought it in earlier, when the photo with her and the kids, it kind of feels like, well, something happened to the kids or something happened with them. But I didn't want to mislead the audience with that, so that's why I put the music cue here after she says it was a Thursday night, and then doom, so that kind of leads the audience, okay, what's going to happen? And then here, this is at the end of where she says they took her to the hospital, and at that point I needed something to have a more of a driving rhythm. Okay, let's get the story going. What happened? So that's why I put this part of the section in. So she talks about, and they took me to the hospital, and they found an aneurysm, and that's kind of where I cut it off for you guys. So that's the first section that I wanted to show. The next part is over here. Okay, so let me just summarize what happens. They find an aneurysm, they life flight her to Springfield, and then they do a surgery, and I'll let you listen.
And they placed coils. Surgery went well. He placed 21 coils. This right here is the aneurysm. This is where it ruptured. And over here is a normal size aneurysm. Okay, this is where they placed a catheter in my groin area.
Okay, so what I wanted to point out about this section here, you can see that I cut it. This is the full mix. This part of the piano has some like happier notes, probably the only happy notes in like the whole song, but they're lighter. They're not as heavy. And so I thought that would be a perfect time to accompany the part where she says the surgery went well, and they placed coils. And so I put that there. And then this right here, I brought in, this is part of the strings. It's just kind of like, I think this is actually part of the underscore mix. But it has this hit. And then I bring in the strings here. And what I wanted to have that hit at this point to emphasize the size of her aneurysm, which is huge compared to like a normal aneurysm. And so then I did a zoom in on that point with that hit, so people, to give the audience a cue of like, this is a big deal. This is a very large aneurysm, and it's scary. So let's just listen to that part again. So good news about her surgery. There's the hit there, and you zoom in to help emphasize the gravity and this, I don't know, how serious this was. So again, I just love having all this flexibility over the music tracks, so I can end part of the section of the song here and bring in this underscore, which it just works so well wherever I want to put it. I could put another one. Look, I actually put another one later on to emphasize another point in the story, and then these strings here to let it breathe a little bit too, but keep that tension up. The last section here, this is the build up. This is the emotional crescendo of the story. This is the climax, kind of the resolution of the story. So with that, I want the music needs to build in the same way and have that emotional crescendo to accompany that story structure. And the crescendo, and if you can see in the tracks here, this is like toward the end. This is like right here. That's the peak. But I have so much more section here to fill in after that. So that's just kind of what I wanted to show you, how I did that. Just the music part. Cool. So as you can see, it like builds up right here, and right when the music goes out, it cuts to black. So again, having those key moments just line up perfectly is gonna enhance your story in so many ways. So then you can tell I brought in back this string, the same string that I have over here and over down here, to help keep the story going and give, tell the audience, okay, we're not done, something's happening. So it keeps it going, keeps that tension still there. And she gets some news, and she gets some good news, and right when she gets some good news, it starts building back up again. It's just like timed perfectly to that. Everything is so intentional, which I love. I love having the flexibility to completely customize a score just because I have all these stems. So bring the strings back in, and then instead of doing a full mix build up, because this end part still needed to build up and end strong, but it wasn't the emotional climax of the whole story. So instead of building with the full mix, the screen one, I built it with the strings, and then at the very end I added back the piano part in it, and then at the very end, actually it's still just piano, but it has a few keys at the end. So I'll let you listen just to where I add in the piano. Oh, you can't even hear it because I have it muted. And that's it. So hopefully that gives you some good idea how to start cutting your music, editing. I guess one of the main tips is just to know to mark the moments in your story that need major cues. And if you don't have a song that comes with all these stems, it doesn't mean you can't do any of this. If I didn't have any of these tracks, then I would do the same thing, but with my full mix. I hope that answers questions. Hopefully it doesn't give you more questions. But again, the song where I got this is Alibi Music, and it's awesome that it comes with all the music stems with it. That's it. If you have questions, seriously, just reach out, just email me, comment. I'm happy to help.